The friendly voice of radio, the people's choice. Music, weather, sports, and news, it's radio. The people choose. Everybody swinging to the swinging voice of radio, the people's choice. Big fry, small fry, dawn to dawn, it's radio that turns them on.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Well, don't forget, tomorrow is Scary Friday. We're going to have our special guest between 7 and 9, Jason Offit. Now, Jason's going to be talking about monsters that, well, supposedly are all across the country by state. So it's going to be rather interesting. And we'll even take a couple call-ins tomorrow. So James and Chad, hopefully you guys are still here.
I'm still here.
Well,
I'm here. James, hi, I'm here too.
So we're all here.
Hey,
we're all here.
Well, how did Howard Hughes ever come involved in this thing with Giant Rock?
well, actually, my uncle had worked for Howard Hughes, in the plane manufacturing business, Hughes Aircraft. And my uncle, he was a savant. He was a self-educated, self-taught engineer, and he literally had worked himself up through the aerospace industry, and actually had become quite good friend. It's funny you talk about you and Ronald Reagan. Yeah, my uncle was good friends with Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes actually gave him some cash for his the Integratron, which is a time and rejuvenation machine that actually still exists. It's out in the desert right now. A lot of tourists go and see it, what have you. But he actually put up some of the cash for that to get the research of it, and actually it's almost a perfect dome structure that has stood the test of time out there, and people have had tremendous health. Almost some people have claimed they actually had remissions of various diseases as they just sat there, because I guess the way it's structured that allows energy to flow in and what have you. But that's how. And Howard used to fly his plane out there. Now Howard used as before he went nuts, which he did go go crazy as far as that stuff. He'd fly out there on a whim. And my aunt, they had a little restaurant there, and she made a pretty good boysenberry pie. And Howard Hughes liked it, so he'd claim he'd go out for my Aunt Eva's pie. But he was just looking to go fly somewhere, and they had a dry lake and so a perfect natural landing. And if he was low on fuel, my uncle actually had airplane fuel. He'd refuel the planes as part of the deal out there as far as that goes. But Howard Hughes had his own experiences too, and actually he's in some of that story is actually in the book in Giant Rock as far as that his experience. He had quite a few sightings. Well, if you're flying around, if you're an aviator, you're gonna and you're flying all over the world, you're gonna have a lot of you just bet dollars to donuts. You're gonna have quite a few experiences. So Howard Hughes had a lot of them. So he was really intrigued with anything avant-garde, and my uncle was really involved in a lot of very weird science. I mean, from the get-go, and so he was knocking on the door of the whole free energy and what have you, trying to figure out how these various machines could work and what have you. So that's how Howard Hughes came in. And speaking of the book, and this is funny, you're right, spot on. Early in the discussion, I was thinking about this, and I didn't want to bring it up. I'm writing a book. I wrote the screenplay, Giant Rock movie, and I wrote the book, which you can get, Giant Rock, which you can get on Amazon. But I started Giant Rock 2. And Giant Rock 2 is literally when a character, Chase, he escapes planet Earth, and literally it gets completely, it literally, some bad things happen. And so this is a dystopian circumstance where Chase comes back to help the various people of the planet Shar, that's what the name for Earth is. And that Giant Rock 2 really consists of after this dystopian world occurs down here, where and so you're bringing up some of the negativities as far as some of that stuff goes. So it kind of segues right into Giant Rock too, because I think if this thing does get, we've had a history of having large floods, meteors, all kinds of stuff happen here, but life seems to always come back, and it's seeded by various entities, and so that's kind of what you were talking about. I said, well, if that happens, then something has to come back and do this. So I thought it was kind of funny, remarkable that you had actually gone down that road, which it's funny. So Giant Rock 2 is a kind of starts as a negative, but as I get along with it, I'm going to make this thing as positive as I can. That's part of the privilege of writing a book, or part of being a writer. At least you control something, and you control the narrative. And so what I want to control is, I want to acknowledge the negative and bad, but I actually want to look for the promise of the future.
Oh yeah,
and hopefully segue into that. So at any rate, but yeah, getting back to Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes is an incredibly brilliant man. I mean, there's no hands down brilliant man. My uncle was a brilliant guy too. The difference between my uncle and Howard was he didn't get left a multi-million-dollar fortune. My uncle was really a self-made man, and kind of had to navigate through the whole thing. But having said that, the crowd that he ran around with and the respect he got from a lot of different people, it was amazing. I mean, it really was. I mean, I think that and some of the I've got a whole volume of a lot of stuff that he had. It came to me. I've got a lot of his channeling. He would do these channeling meditative group combinations inside of the rock. Just sat inside a giant rock out in the desert. There was a structure that was built, and you could stick up to 30 people inside of it. But usually every Friday, it was kind of an open forum where a group of people would come to the inside the rock, and they would channel and essentially channel information and what have you. And that's where a lot of the information came for the Integratron. That was essentially, which was actually a rejuvenation machine, a molecular rejuvenation machine. That was what it was designed for, and it's a very interesting. I was always inside of it when I was a little kid, and you always would feel different if you went from inside of it and then you went outside of it, and it was really interesting as far as how that was. But there were so many different. And even inside of Giant Rock, which is, Giant Rock is an 8.5-story boulder that was carved out by Mr. Frank Kreitzer that you had mentioned earlier in the last segue. Frank Kreitzer came out there and he blasted and dug, and he created himself a sustainable living quarters down there
for a while,
where it was comfortable. Yeah, this was in the 1930s, and so he was comfortable down there, and then, consequently, he got backwards. And I think that with a lot of the authorities, a lot of the locals referred to him as Crazy Kreitzer because he kept on, telling people that he would see UFOs the size of dirigibles come out and land. And so all the people out there thought he was mad. And so consequently, he ran afoul of a lot of his neighbors and what have you. But he also was a tinker, and he had had a shortwave radio, and he spoke fluent German, and this is during World War II. There's a couple of sides of the story. Go ahead. Yeah, and so what had happened was they thought he was transmitting information, and when they came to talk to him, he wouldn't come out of the rock. And so the way the story goes is they put a smoke bomb down there, and Kreitzer had dynamite, and it had literally ignited the dynamite, and he got eviscerated down the side of the rock. So that's how we lost Frank Kreitzer. And then after that, my uncle grub-staked Frank Kreitzer from about 1930 to, because he was essentially prospecting out there for minerals too, and that was how their connection came. So, anyways, after Kreitzer had died, George and my whole family, they about 6 years later, in 1947, all went out there and essentially homesteaded and built homes and built a small restaurant, and that was kind of like the celebrity dude ranch where you had the likes of a lot of entertainers to go out there, big name entertainments, Debbie Reynolds, Engelbert Humperdinck. There was a huge fan base of the whole UFO contactee movement down there too. So that was what was going on as far as from circa 1947 until it essentially died down a few years before my uncle's death in '78. There was a lot of activity going on, and thank God that the Integratron had changed ownership hands several times, and it's being maintained now in fairly good condition. And literally, it's always busy. There's always several cars out there of people who are renting the place for various reasons, what have you. So,
is there still sightings?
That was.
Is there still sightings of UFOs and stuff in that area?
Yes, there are. There's quite a few. I have a friend actually who's helping in one way or helping me with the movie, and he's out of Hollywood, and he actually I think he's had about 6 different sightings over the last year or two out there, and he was also interesting story. He had actually been abducted. He grew up there too as a little kid. He's actually my